Hey everybody, Josh Cripps here from Pro Photo Tips. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Manfrotto Digital Director, which is a piece of hardware and an app that basically allows you to use your iPad Air, or your iPad mini as an external monitor for your camera to control your camera, change all the settings, and shoot photos and shoot video. So full disclosure, Manfrotto did send this to me for free to check out, but credibility is really important to me, so I'm going to give you my honest review, all of my thoughts, the pros and the cons over the Digital Director. All right, so let's take a look and see how this thing works. First of all, you just slide your iPad right into the Digital Director like that. There's a clip here to hold everything in, and this locking thing to make sure it doesn't fall out. Then in terms of power, you can either use 4 AA batteries here, or you can plug in your AC adapter down here. Next, you got to take your USB cable from your camera and plug it into the Digital Director. And in terms of mounting, there is a mounting port here on the back. Unfortunately, it doesn't come with the mounting attachment, but as you can see, I've improvised with a couple of clamps here that hold it nicely on my tripod, just like that. Next, you turn the iPad on, turn the Digital Director on with a button here on the back, then turn your camera on in that order. If you don't do that, sometimes the connection between the app and the camera gets screwed up. Then once we launch the app, you'll see that it connects to the camera and starts showing a live preview of exactly what the camera is seeing. And you'll see here, if I move the camera around, sure enough, the iPad shows exactly what the camera is seeing. I can zoom in, zoom out, and the iPad shows that exactly what the camera is seeing. Okay, so let's take a look at the app itself. You can see we've got a main display window here that's showing exactly what the camera is seeing. Over here on the right hand side, you've got all your controls for the camera, and down here you've got some displays. Shows your histogram, which you can cycle between your RGB and your grayscale histogram just by tapping it. Shows the battery life of the Digital Director, the drive mode you're in, single or continuous, your raw image quality. You can also adjust your white balance here, the shooting mode you're in, and the focus mode that you're in as well. Then over here on the right, in terms of your settings, you've got your ISO, your shutter speed, your f-stop, and your manual focus lock. And to adjust any of those parameters, all you have to do is pretend that they're an actual camera dial and cycle them to the left or to the right. So for example, right now I'm at 1/10 of a second. If I just cycle that way, it increases the exposure, and you can see the histogram is updated dynamically as I change my settings. If I need to stop down a little bit, I can do that too, just by twiddling the virtual dial here on the iPad. Now, in terms of focus, it has a dynamic touch spot focus, so all you have to do is the area that you want to focus on, just tap on that on the screen. It will engage the autofocus of the camera and focus there. Then if you want to double check that you've got everything super tight and focused, you can zoom in here and just make sure everything is nice and focused. You can make some subtle adjustments if you want to. You can also cycle your focus a little bit back or forth using this dial here, just to really fine-tune things. Then you can go ahead and zoom back out. Adjust your composition if you need to. Do whatever, focus again, however you like. And then to take a picture, you just hit right down there, and off you go. There are a couple of other really cool features that the app has built into it. One is focus peaking, which typically up to this point, only mirrorless cameras have, and you don't find those in these DSLRs. And this basically shows you the areas that are in focus in the photo. So if you want to just double check that everything's in good sharp focus, you can use that focus peaking. The zebra filter I'll talk about in just a little bit. There's also a bracketing feature where you can take up to 3 shots, up to 3 stops apart. And down here in the timers, you've got your intervalometer or your time lapse. And you can plug in all these parameters yourself, or you can just put in a couple and the app will calculate out everything else, like the amount of time you need to shoot in order to get a video of a certain length, or the interval between frames, all that kind of stuff. Now, if you want to leave in a little bit bigger screen, you can also hit this button right here, and that will expand it out so that the camera view fills the entire frame of the iPad. And then to access your settings, you have this little guy here, so you can, for example, bring up your bracketing. You can bring up your histogram. You can bring up your camera settings, and if you need to just move that around. So the app is very intuitive. It's very easy to use. It takes about 10 minutes to figure out exactly what you're doing. Now, the other thing you can do through the app is control video. So if you just hit this toggle up here, it cycles it from the camera shooting to the video shooting. Now you have all the exact same controls. You can see here it's way, way, way too hot. It's way too blown out. So I can stop down my aperture a little bit here, and I can drop my ISO back down to 100, 64, sure. And I'll speed up my shutter speed till I have a nice, good exposure across my video. You can see there's also a audio monitor down here on the iPad as well, which is pretty cool. So then it's just as before to initiate a recording. Hit the record button. Now we're going. Hey everybody, I'm recording my hand. And to stop, you hit that button again. Now here in video mode, this is where the zebra filter comes in very handy. And all of the little zebra striping areas show you either what's about to be blown out or what's about to be clipped in the shadows. And you can actually adjust the sensitivity of that in the app settings, whether you want to show highlights or shadows, just one or the other, and at what level they start to show the striping. Now when you're done with all this and you want to see what you've been doing, in fact, let's take a quick picture just so we've got something to take a look at. You can go down here to the film strip, and that will bring up all the images that you've taken. And then you can do a live preview here on the iPad. It takes a little bit to download the photo from the camera to the iPad, but once you've got it, you've got all of the classic iPad gestures and things like that. So for example, you can pinch zoom to see exactly, you can double check that your focus is good. You can look at the photos here in high res on the iPad, which is a pretty cool feature. However, there is one major downside, which is you cannot currently preview video files on the iPad. I'm really hoping Manfrotto will change that in the future. That's a major stumbling block. The Digital Director also comes with a suite of basic editing tools, so you can adjust contrast, saturation, brightness, color, things like that of your JPEG files. And it's also, because it's built into the iPad, if you have access to Wi-Fi, you can then send these photos, you can upload them to clients, you can shoot them to a friend, you can send them via text message. So it is kind of cool, but note that all the editing features are all JPEG only, so you're just making a copy of your JPEG, not doing anything with the RAW files. However, if you want a really quick in-the-field workflow so that you can shoot a sweet image off to your friend to make them super jealous, you have that option. So that's pretty much it. That's how the Digital Director app works. It's very easy, it's very intuitive, and it works pretty well with essentially no lag between the camera and the iPad itself. So this is all really cool and fancy and neat, but the question is, should you be using this for your photography? Is it going to help you become a better photographer? And the bottom line is, if you are actively looking for an external monitor or a way to take pictures separate so you're not actually there touching the camera, this is a great option. If you already have an iPad, especially, it's far more economical to get the Digital Director than it is to buy a dedicated external monitor or to invest in a new camera that maybe has a flip-out screen. Or if you simply like the control and the usability and the features of using an iPad to take your photos as opposed to actually manipulating the camera, it's a great option. But what about in more specific cases? So I'm a nature photographer and I make short videos for YouTube. What about in those specific cases is the Digital Director useful? Now when it comes to nature photography, I have to say I'm honestly not going to use this. It's one more piece of equipment that I've got to lug around. If I'm out hiking, the last thing I want to do is bring another piece of equipment with me. And also, I find that working with the camera is very quick and very easy because I've been doing it a long time. And I find that using another interface to deal with what I'm doing here is just one more step in the process. I'd rather just get on my camera, make my changes quickly and easily, and move a little bit more sveltely. Now, there are a couple of exceptions to that. One would be if you really like having a big screen to review your compositions and take a look at what you're doing, you're probably going to love being able to use the iPad screen to monitor your composition and take pictures as opposed to the little live view screen or the viewfinder of your camera. The other exception would be if you've got your camera in some crazy weird spot, like a tiny little crevice on the ground or up high, or somewhere where it's going to be really difficult for you to actually get to the camera and see what you're doing, then this is amazing because you can stand here and see your exact composition, change your settings with your camera stuffed in some tiny little hole or something like that. So in those situations, that's going to be very useful. Now for video production, things get a lot more interesting. The fact that you have this huge screen makes on-the-fly composition a lot easier for your video production, and the focus peaking and the zebra striping are amazing features that you typically only find on an external monitor that really help figure out if your subjects are in focus, if you're blowing out part of your frame. It really helps with the video production. I also love the fact that I can actually stand in front of the camera, check my focus, check my framing, start and stop my recording all from the iPad while I'm standing out in front of the camera. That's extremely helpful. It means I don't have to walk back around, put a tripod here, focus on that, check my focus and framing, go take a test shot. I can do all of that on the fly, boom, right out in front of the camera. The other cool thing about it is since it runs as an app on the iPad, I have access to all my other iPad apps. So I can take the script for a video that I'm doing, load it up on the iPad as notes or in my email, and just switch back and forth between the Digital Director and that script so I can really quickly check what I need to say, switch back to the Digital Director, and initiate recording. Now there are a couple of annoyances to using the app for recording video. One is that you're limited by the length of your USB cable, so you can't actually stand too far away from your camera. But the biggest annoyance is that the app itself does not support video playback. So once you've recorded a video using the Digital Director, you can't view it on the iPad. If you want to review what you've done in the field, you've got to actually disconnect the app from the camera by hitting the little Live View Off button. Then you can go back to the camera and play the videos here, which kind of defeats the purpose of having an external monitor if you have to go back to the camera to see what you've recorded. However, for everything else, all the other parts of video production, it works really well. So if you can overlook that one thing, I think you're going to really enjoy using this as part of your video production. So there you have it. That's the Manfrotto Digital Director in a nutshell. All in all, it's a cool piece of technology. The app works well. It does what it says it's advertised. Am I going to use it for nature photography? Probably not, except maybe in some certain situations where my camera is in a really awkward position. Am I going to use it for my video production? Definitely. I'm going to keep it with me. I'm going to use it to initiate recordings and check my framing, check my focus, all that sort of stuff, just to help simplify the video production process in the field. So if you're looking for a good external monitor and you already have an iPad, this is a good way to go. Thanks a lot for checking this review out. Until next time, have fun and happy shooting.